you feel like you're an old grandparent when you always acknowledge your grandkids. And I happen to have my grandson on today that I'm very excited about. Also, he's the author now. And that's what the Laboratory of Change is about. We want to make the playing field level for everybody, especially people, young people in general. Jason, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, now, don't be like your uncle now was on here. You know, me and Shane, every time he agreed with everything, huh, Shane? But I know you're a little different, Joe. Tell us about your book.
First off, my name is Jason Anderson. I finished writing the book, I want to say, in December of 2022. I started writing the book in March 2018. And
wow.
It only, in my mind, took me a year and a half to finish. But once I involved my editor, one of my professors from Howard actually linked me with an editor.
Hey, Chew, Dad, you hear that, Shane?
China McNeil helped me edit my book, and she got a hold of it in, I want to say, July of 2020. And I thought I was finished until I met her, and then I realized that I wasn't.
You wasn't ready at all. Okay.
And we went through the editing process maybe about 3 or 4 times, from a complete overhaul the first time, regular spot edits a couple times throughout 21, and then another complete overhaul again in 2022. So that's why it took me so long, and I eventually was able to have my release event in 23 this year.
Which
March.
your granddad missed, but you know I was coming out there. I just got lost.
It was a rainy day. It was traffic and such things. So yeah, I know it affected some people's travel, but I know I always appreciate the support you give, and you know we support you. So.
Hey, you know your grandfather. Hey, Shane, I'm definitely not going to have you to look at my books, Shane, because if you went to that, and my grandson a lot more articulate than his grandfather and sharp in terms of writing. But now, let's go into this, Jason.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this book. But I'll give them away the family secrets now. You know what I mean?
Okay. So a lot of what I would say inspired the book was being at Howard originally, honestly, and learning so much about different principles that are like socialism related, sociology related, and then having to meet those ideas with ones that I already had. And what I mean, a lot of times we have these foundational beliefs that we get from our family, that we get from our environment. And as we become older, if we're lucky, we're able to expand outside of those perspectives. And sometimes those perspectives that we get as adults or in our travels might be in conflict with the older ideas that we grew up with. And for me, I wanted to write this book to, of course, think about how I had my own transformation and filter some of the transformation that I had through the lens of just a story. And I like love. Most of my tattoos that I have are about love. I watch love movies and all that stuff. So it's a big thing for me. And I used the relationship between love and family and ideas to create a book where I could express the contentiousness of new ideas as it relates to family, as it relates to love, and also to kind of talk about my own transformation and give some commentary on things that I think other people that I care about should consider. Not too much to judge anyone's circumstance or tell anybody what to do, but just to give them a perspective to consider something different than what they already might feel or believe.
Okay, now, because you know you come from a rich history background with our family on both sides. You know, in your book, it has to be, you know, I myself had not had an opportunity to read it. It's good that way because now I can get one for free. You know what I mean, Shane?
We got you one today.
So if you went into your book and there was a particular chapter in there that you would want to, you know, point out, which would it be, and tell me why?
It's a chapter called Gamma Virginis. The reason why, partially, that was almost the title of the book. The book is called The Virgins. The name is inspired by the Virgo constellation because some astrology is kind of blended into the story because of how it relates to, of course, relationships, and sometimes people believe the astrology will kind of guide their relationships, but also because of the nature of destiny. And we feel almost like because we come from stars, they might be able to dictate where we live our life through. So that chapter was almost the title chapter. Gamma Virginis is a binary star system and the Virgo constellation. The book has a lot of elements related to Virgos and even a little slander sometimes. But in that chapter, I think is really the crux of the book for my main character. His name is Yaya. And in that chapter, you really get to see the conflict of wanting to be one thing and also recognizing that this might not be my reality. And that is where it all kind of comes to a head. I think it has a good climax just in that chapter alone. Before I rolled out the complete book, I actually separated that chapter and sold it as an ebook on Apple and through my own website. And it did really well. So that kind of affirmed me and made me want to continue to see it through. So when I got that affirmation from people being receptive to it, it made me like, okay, I can really keep pushing. And it let me know that the things that I was writing about might be really potent for people to ingest.
Well, you got your grandfather entrepreneur spirit in you, that's for sure. Okay, but let me ask you this. Okay, our family background, not putting anything out there, but it was kind of challenging, even coming up in a family like ours. Ours is probably no different than other people, but then again, it is different. Everybody different. In this book, now I'm not an astrology person, and I'm not going to pretend to be that. That's something your grandfather. I'm not. I'm who I am.
Right.
So, you get into this book, but let's go back a little bit first. Growing up and stuff and the things that you're doing, you realize that you were different. Everybody different. What made you come up with this concept? Should I say? Let me make sure I'm using the right terminology for it, because, if something brought you to write in this book, okay, as your life, it was no different. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't bad. But, I'm trying to get an understanding
Like,
and
why
a
did I
knowledge
write a book in the first place?
Absolutely.
Oh, this one I'll give you credit for. So
I'm getting credit, Shane. You heard that.
A big part of who I am a really competitive person. And because of that, the way I get inspired for a lot of different things is seeing the people that I might respect or admire talk about or want to do things. The thing that brought me to Howard, I have two little cousins, one of them Michael, the other one Aaron, and they always used to talk about Howard. So when I had the opportunity to go, I didn't too much care about what school I went to at the time, so I ended up applying to Howard and I went. My father also, I think he told me he spent a semester at Howard. So once I got there, the motivation was to just beat him. Do longer than a semester there.
Well, we always want our kids to do better than we've done, or we want them to just do a little better, if not, greater than we are.
Okay. And now I get to you, because my whole life, and probably even before I was born, you always talked about writing books. And I said, I got to finish my book before my grandfather finishes his book. And that is a big part of the reason why I wanted to finish it. But just in terms of telling stories, I always liked the idea of being able to tell stories. When I was young, I used to draw a lot, and that turned into me making my own little paper booklets. And I thought my version of telling stories would be something more related to a visual art and being able to draw the pictures. And that's something I still want to pursue. But I realized I might be a better writer than I was a drawing person. So I put that on the back burner for now, and I just put the words at the forefront. And as I got to Howard, again, I want to get it. Actually, let me go back. When I was in high school, I had a teacher. I stayed back in the 9th grade. A lot of people don't know this about me. I stayed back because
I didn't.
I failed English.
Okay.
And I was always good at English, but I was not driven. I didn't have any motivation at that time. And when I stayed back, the next year, I was in 9th grade again. and I had 2 English teachers. I had to take Saturday
I know
school.
your mother was pissed.
Oh yeah, she made me pay for it.
My daughter,
she made me pay for it.
Oh, did Granny pay for it?
No. Ironically,
I know
really,
Granny because she will bail y'all out. I know she, and I found out about
my grandmother. My grandmother gave me some money to help me do my reprints, and I'll talk about why I had to do reprints. But I got in a car accident, and because of that car accident, I got a check, paid for the Saturday school. But my Saturday school teacher, he would have us reading all of these different books and stuff. And it brought back my love for, of course, reading. And I had a teacher who was my second English teacher that year who told me I was a good writer. Now, that stayed in the back of my mind. And she always said, I'm going to take an essay that you have and I'm going to put it in my book. And that made me feel, in my little 15-year-old mind, it made me feel good. Right. So when I got to Howard, I took a creative writing class. And Patricia Elam, my professor, she was very complimentary of my writing too. So that is what pushed me. Okay, it went from an idea of I just might write to now I'm actually going to take it serious and put together collections of stories. So I have, of course, the inspiration of my grandfather always talking about doing his books and the support I got along the way too.
Yeah. So, man, that's good. I'm really flattered. The fact that you did something your grandfather still have not finished the 3 books. Working. And after this, it's so many, but you said something to your grandfather earlier, grandfather, daddy, just got to just do it, and that's easier said than done with all the other things that I'm doing, as you know. But, I'm, Jason, your grandfather was there with you when you were playing football, little league football, and I was out there and everything. I just shook my head and I looked at him, I said, this ain't for him, along with David.
My team was bad.
But, and as with all, even with your Uncle David and the Marines, and he played football, and I was so mad. I looked at them coaches, I'm like, wait a minute, if you're not going to teach my grandkids right, you're not going to teach them at all. That's well, fair. Michael and them, but then again, I feel that I was kind of pushy too, and I should not have been that way. But being the type of person I am, and me playing at the highest level, and I just couldn't sit back, and I had to remind myself sometimes, let these kids grow up and stuff. But I just didn't want to. I want to make sure no injury came to y'all, right. Especially if these guys, just do this just to be doing it. They're not regular, coaches getting paid for it. So. You impress your grandfather, and your grandfather not easy to be impressed by anything. But I think about the things that you're doing, and I want to hear more about this book. Because I'm fascinated, listen to you talk, and I always knew you was articulate, but the fact that you wrote a book, you did something that your grandfather yet to do. I'm a little mad at that. I'll take my time on that. But let me take this break, and we're gonna come right back. You're listening to another edition of Inside the MFL. We'll be right back. Back to your book, and tell MFL Nation, more about your book.
So, and even you mentioning wanting to talk about change, one of the biggest aspects of the book for me is definitely change. So one of the core ideas that I tried to capture was, as we grow up, we have certain foundational ideas that might lead us, and they guide who we become as people, as adults, as mothers, as fathers, parents, human beings in general. But we also might have new information that we have to reconcile with that changes who we might think we are supposed to be. Right. And in this book, my main character, Yahya, a lot of the change that he goes through is about his relationships with women and what you think your relationships are supposed to be like with women, right, based on, of course, the examples that you see, based on the environment that you come from, and even some of your contemporaries that you talk to. There's a certain script that you think you are supposed to follow.
Right.
But in becoming a bit more adjusted, and you learn new information, and you are more receptive, because it's not just about learning information, you have to also be receptive. Right. And that's why I wanted to use the lens of a love story, because the people that you care about make you listen a little bit different. Mm-hmm. If someone were to just tell you, you might want to change this, this, and this, they're like, yeah, I hear you. But the person that you care about saying it to you makes you a lot more open. So in the story, right? Yeah, in the story, Yahya is growing and changing based on the women that he has these relationships with, but also has to reconcile with the fact that I have women in my life who might support this version of me. And it becomes contentious for men who are trying to find out the way that they are to navigate certain situations, when you might have one set of women who are like, this is how you should be, this is how I want you to respond to me. But you might have another set of women who are like, no, you don't have to do that. And they might affirm some of the negative habits that you have, and it becomes difficult to feel like you're doing something wrong if people are supporting your bad habits. But you also have someone that you love and you want to be better for, trying to push you towards that. So then you might have to deal with the fact that, do I want to really sacrifice who I am and who I think I am to appease this person that I care about? Or do I want to stay in my comfort zone and say, you know what, I'm just going to do this because this is who I've been the whole time?
But, really, and when you think about it, it's no right or wrong way to it. It's like, me, your grandfather, I think in terms, I'm like a puzzle. I collect the pieces as I go. But that's not saying that particular piece will fit the puzzle. So then again, you have to throw that out and get another one. So, I like the fact that you got your grandfather in you because you dare to be different. And a lot of times, as you stated, a lot of times people, they don't not sure what they should do in terms of, should I do it this way? Should I just throw my hands up and say, but that's not life. Life isn't difficult. People make it that way. And I say that to say that we are not, if we had a crystal ball and we can say what's going to happen in the next few minutes or the next 20 minutes, I know myself, or I'm quite sure, Shane, I don't want to know what's going to happen in the next 30 minutes. I really don't. And if it was something be good or bad, because if it was bad, then you're going to have a heart attack. And if it's good, you're going to worry yourself to death because you can't wait till it comes. So it's like a double-edged sword somewhat, if that makes sense. But now getting back to your book, I'm curious about why you named the young man Yaya.
Oh, I just like creative names. So a big part of the naming for the different characters are all inspired by either different star constellations or flowers. But the main character, I really just found a name that I like, and I was like, I'm going to give him that. But as it relates to the women in the story, we have the main, I guess, love interest is Yasmin, which is the jasmine flower. We have a rose, Rosa, which is the rose.
Wow. Didn't mean to cut you off, because I was going to ask you, what is the other people names in the book?
Yeah. So all of the Virgos in the book, because again, like I said, we have our little astrology and our constellations in there, have a name that is both a flower. So again, I mentioned Yasmin, I mentioned Rose. We also have Jewel, there's a jewel flower, and a bunch of other different names that are associated with these flowers. And the reason why flowers were important is because I'm sure you've heard the cliche, we've all heard the cliche of, if you really love a flower, you don't pick it, because if you pick it, it dies.
Right.
But for a lot of men especially, the way that we tend to relate to the people and the things that we care about, we want to have a certain ownership and possession of it.
Right.
But in having that possession, you might end up doing some damage. So the lesson that Yaya ends up learning,
gonna do some damage to it.
The lesson that Yaya ends up learning is to be able to appreciate and to love something for what it is, without having to take so much ownership that you end up destroying the relationship and maybe even the person.
When you say that, does it make it difficult because the fact that you really don't know, and you're really taking a chance in terms of, you really don't know, as you stated earlier, we love flowers, but if we pick it, it'll die. But how do you love this flower? Sometimes you can't leave it there all the time, because eventually it's going to die there as well. So, I mean, Tell me
So that's something that's something that I actually touch on. It's around the Gamma Virginis chapter, but I believe it comes before, and it's a conversation Yaya has with another character about fake flowers as opposed to real flowers. Fake flowers. The myth is that fake flowers don't really last, or fake things don't last. But everything that's fake lasts a lot longer than real. So plastic lasts much longer than an actual flower. But the thing that makes a real flower and the real things much more beautiful is the fact that it does end. Something that continues to go on forever doesn't really have the same impact for us because we know we can take it for granted. When you know you have to care for something, when you know something is going to grow, something is going to change, and it has its seasons where it's good, it has its seasons where it's bad, it forces you to take more care as opposed to something that is fabricated like a fake flower.
Right.
You could do whatever you want to. You could throw it against the wall, you could set it on fire, and it still will maintain most of its form.
I don't know about setting on fire.
Yeah.
If you set it on fire,
Not too
you
much,
really
yeah.
destroy. Shane, I don't know about that now, but I understand what you're saying. But, let me move you a little forward in the book, or should I say backwards. Now, let's hear the bad part to this book, because nothing is going to be perfect in terms of no happy ending to anything, be it... well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe I used the wrong choice of words. But let's get to the bad part in the book.
Okay,
or the challenging part in the book.
So
where do you have your challenges?
So I would say the more challenging pieces are the recognizing your bad behaviors and Yaya having to be inside his own mind and saying that I did something to hurt this person, and then having to reconcile with that. So we even get into some addiction, we get into some drug use. I'll even throw a spoiler in there. We do have a car accident that's almost induced by one of the bad behaviors that he exhibits. Somewhere where he crosses a line too much and he goes a little bit too far, and because of that, he has to deal with the consequences of that. Now, he doesn't get into an accident because he crossed the boundary with someone he cares about. But as he's thinking and reflecting about it, it really affects his self-worth and his self-identity. And it's almost like, I don't even want to be alive anymore, because if this is the type of person that I am, I'm this terrible. Maybe I don't deserve to live. And even bringing up the idea of these bad pieces, something that was really important for me to convey with this book is that even if you are not the best person, even if you're not a prototypical good person, bad people deserve love too. Bad people need love. And the reason why you should still love someone despite whatever their faults might be is because you don't get them to stop being that way by putting them off into an island and leaving them to their own devices. Now, that's not to say you make excuses for those bad behaviors, and that's not to say that you would just accept whatever abuse or craziness that they throw on you, but you always want to make sure your heart is open enough that if they are willing to be better, or at least try to do better, that you leave room for them. And that's something that I feel in relationships, but also just us as people. Sometimes we want to throw people away because, they're not the right type of person, or they made these types of mistakes. And because of that, we no longer want to deal with them. Well, you don't stop those people from making those mistakes by casting them out. Sometimes you have to love people more than they deserve so that they can be better than what they were.
Well, I'm glad you said that. In terms of, we have to understand it's all right to not be all right. So, and people feeling that, and as you touched on, you cast these people to the sides. No, that's not the answers. But then again, if we had all the answers, what would this world be? But the book is interesting to say. And I can't wait to find time to read it, since my grandson going to sign it and give it to his granddad. We have a few minutes left. What is your? I know you have some other books in mind. Why don't you tell us briefly about that and how we can, find your book and get to your book.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to try to make my commercial brief. I'm going to hold the book up to the camera so you all can see it. I got the art by an artist named Benjamin.
It's a busy cover, though.
Yeah, it ties into the narrative of the book. When you actually read the book, it'll make a lot more sense. But I'll say you can get the book at cancri.com, CAN-CRI.com. And that name is what I would like to use for my publishing company. I'm trying to build my own publishing company because I know a lot of times the institutions that we might have right now are not always open to people who come from where we come from.
They look like us.
Yeah. And even the ones that do look like us might reserve their space for people who have a little bit more money than us and a little bit more training and formalities. I wanted to have a publishing company where I'm open to people who come from places where I come from and really work with them to build themselves up towards being all of the big name artists and authors that everybody else respects. Also, my publishing company is going to be a way for me to, of course, produce my own works, but to also be a staple in the community for younger people who are coming up, even older.
To do this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just to give them hope and give them an avenue to release their works. The publishing space is very, very controlled. People do not get the opportunity to make a lot of money. People are getting 12%.
Control the narrative.
Yeah, people are getting 12% royalties after they recoup their advances, and the publisher set the price. I don't think that's fair. So with my publishing company, that's not something that I want to do. So the book that I have right now, The Virgins, again, you can get it at cancri.com, CAN-CRI.com, is my launching off point, but I'm always willing and looking to work with other people. I've been compiling a new book, and I've been working on that for the past couple of weeks. I took a break because, again, once I got into the mind to create this book, I didn't want to spend too much time jumping to the next project. I wanted to really sit with it. But, yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Well, that means that I got another business that I'm on my way to be a part of. If you notice, Shane, as soon as he said that, and which I would love to be a part of that, they help you, and what you're saying makes sense because, we have to make the playing field level. Mm-hmm. And that's what your grandfather always said, this is the laboratory of change, and what you're doing right now, I would say kudos to you. I'm proud of you. I love you. And hey, we're going to get you back on because I'm very serious about how things are going to evolve with your other books as well. So thank you for being on this morning.